She said my name like she'd already known it for years. Softly, slowly, as if testing how it might sound when whispered instead of spoken. It was late afternoon, that heavy, golden hour where everything feels softer than it should. I'd come to drop something off, nothing important. A favor, really. The kind you say yes to without thinking, until you find yourself standing in someone else's kitchen, trying not to stare too long. She was by the window, sleeves rolled, hair tied loose. There was nothing dramatic about her. No perfume cloud, no practiced smile. Just the sound of running water, her hand in the sink, and sunlight on her wrist. Still, something about her made the room feel smaller, like it could barely contain the silence between us. I remember thinking that she didn't look older. She looked finished. Like every gesture meant something because she'd already learned what didn't. "You don't have to stay," she said, glancing back. "I know." But I didn't move. Neither did she. Her tone wasn't cold, more like she was giving me a choice she didn't expect me to take. The air between us had that stillness you can't make up. The kind that makes you aware of every sound. The tap dripping, a chair creaking, my pulse doing something unfamiliar. She turned off the tap and dried her hands slow. The towel brushed her fingers longer than it should have. When she handed it to me, for no reason, really, her fingers grazed mine. Just once. Barely. But it landed somewhere deep. "You're quiet," she said. "I don't know what to say." She smiled then, not because she found it funny, but because it wasn't the kind of answer people usually gave her. That was the first thing I noticed. She listened like she wanted to catch the parts one didn't say out loud. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms, her eyes catching mine, not sharp, not soft, but deliberate. "You shouldn't look at people like that," she said. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to remember them." The line hit me before I could even answer. Because she was right, that was exactly what I was doing. Memorizing the way she tilted her head, the small line near her mouth that appeared only when she was trying not to smile. A breeze came in through the open window, lifting the edge of her hair. It brushed my arm when she moved closer, maybe by accident, maybe not. Her scent wasn't something I could name, but it made everything else, the air, the light, the quiet, feel charged. "I don't usually let people help me," she said. "You're an exception." I wanted to ask why. Instead, I just nodded. "Does that make you nervous?" she asked. "Should it?" She looked at me for a long time. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath when she exhaled. "Maybe," she said. Her voice had that edge between caution and invitation. I didn't trust myself to answer. Something shifted. Not a sound, not a movement, just the awareness that we'd gone too far into a silence neither of us knew how to leave. Then, just as she opened her mouth to say something else, there was a knock at the door. She didn't move. Neither did I. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, then back to me, steady, unreadable. "Don't," she whispered, almost too low to catch. And before I could ask what she meant, the doorknob turned. The knock that broke the silence turned out to be nothing. A delivery, a wrong door, something forgettable. But what it interrupted wasn't. After she closed the door, the quiet came back, only heavier. She didn't look at me right away. Instead, she poured water into 2 glasses and handed me one, as if we could drink away what almost happened. Her fingers brushed mine again, steadier this time. "You can breathe, you know," she said. "I wasn't holding my breath." "You were." A small smile. One of those knowing, slightly cruel ones that come from experience. She sat across from me at the table. The late light caught in the lines near her eyes. Not harsh, just honest. She didn't hide from it the way most people did. I think that's what drew me in first. She seemed entirely unafraid of being seen. But under that calm, there was something else. Something tired. "So," she said, tracing the rim of her glass, "do you always stare at women twice your age, or is that just my lucky day?" I almost laughed. "You're not twice my age." She raised an eyebrow. "Close enough." Her tone was teasing, but her eyes weren't. I hesitated, then said, "Maybe I like people who already know who they are." She looked down then, just for a second, like the words landed somewhere she didn't expect. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "It makes it harder to pretend." "Pretend what?" "That we're not thinking the same thing." The air between us shifted again, smaller, tighter. She glanced away, pretending to adjust something on the table. Her wedding ring wasn't there. I noticed, but didn't ask. Maybe she noticed me noticing, because she sighed. "My husband and I, we're not really anything anymore," she said, almost to herself. "Just habits in the same house." I didn't know what to do with that. So I said the wrong thing. "You don't seem lonely." She gave a low laugh, the kind that's more breath than sound. "That's because you don't see me at night." Her voice went soft, and my heartbeat stumbled. I looked away, pretending to study the light on the wall, but I could feel her watching me. The kind of gaze that strips away your excuses. When she stood, her chair scraped lightly. She walked behind me, close enough that her sleeve brushed my shoulder. I could feel the warmth of her as she leaned to reach something on the counter. "You shouldn't stay too long," she said quietly, still reaching, her voice just above my ear. "I know." But neither of us moved. She let her hand rest on the back of my chair, not on me, but close enough that the space between skin and air felt like a touch. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then she exhaled slow. "You make it too easy to forget what I promised myself," she whispered. Her hand slipped away. But when I turned to look at her, she wasn't walking off. She was still there, watching me like she didn't trust herself to speak. The silence stretched, thin and dangerous. And in that silence, something unspoken settled. Something that neither of us could name yet, but neither of us would undo. She called me a few days later, said something about a leak under the sink again, though I knew she could have fixed it herself. Her voice was careful, like she was testing whether I'd still come. I did. When I got there, the house was quiet in that deliberate way, curtains half closed, music low enough to be background but not silence. She was barefoot, hair damp from a shower, a loose shirt half tucked like she'd stopped dressing halfway through the thought. "You didn't have to rush," she said. "I didn't." Her eyes flicked to the clock, then back to me, like she knew I had. We didn't talk much after that. I knelt down under the sink, pretending to focus on the pipes while she leaned on the counter nearby, sipping from a glass of water she never actually drank. I could feel her gaze, the way it lingered when she thought I wasn't looking. Every small sound felt amplified, the drip of the faucet, the shift of her bare foot on the tile. "You're good at this," she said finally. "Fixing things? Being quiet." I smiled without meaning to. "You talk enough for both of us." She didn't answer right away. When I looked up, she was watching me, not smiling, just watching. Her eyes moved slowly, taking me in like she was trying to memorize the way the moment looked before it became something else. "I shouldn't have called," she said. "I know." "I didn't want to." "I know." A small pause. Her voice went lower. "But you came anyway." There was a soft buzz from the counter, her phone lighting up with a message. She didn't move to check it. The screen flashed a name I didn't recognize. Her jaw tightened slightly, but she turned the phone face down without a word. The silence that followed wasn't comfortable anymore. It was something else, something charged. When I stood, we were too close. I could smell her shampoo, something faint and clean. Her shirt brushed my arm when she shifted, and she didn't step back. Neither did I. "I don't think this is a good idea," she said, though her voice barely carried. "Then tell me to leave." She looked up at me, slow, deliberate, almost pained. "I can't." Her hand lifted, as if to touch my face, but she stopped halfway. The air between us was warm, too thin. I didn't move. I couldn't. Her fingers hovered near my jaw, trembling slightly, then retreated. "You're making this harder," she whispered. "So are you." She exhaled, and the sound of it felt like it went straight through me. Just as the space between us broke, just as she tilted her head slightly, almost closing the gap, the doorbell rang. We froze. Her eyes went wide, panic, guilt, something else. "Don't say anything," she whispered, stepping back quickly, her hand brushing mine in the rush. The contact burned like a secret. A man's voice came from outside, casual, familiar. She turned toward the door, breathing uneven. I stayed where I was, heart loud enough I was sure he'd hear it. She glanced back once before opening the door, that same look, the one that said this didn't happen. But as she spoke to whoever was outside, her hand stayed pressed against the counter, the one I just touched. And even from across the room, I could see it trembling. It happened 3 nights later, late enough that visiting made no sense, early enough that pretending still seemed possible. She'd left the porch light on. I told myself it meant nothing. When she opened the door, she didn't ask why I'd come. Just stepped aside, like she'd been expecting it even if she hadn't planned to. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. The kind that hums in your chest. She was wearing a sweater this time, sleeves pushed to her elbows, hair down. I noticed the faint mark on her neck. Not from me, not from anyone recently, but old enough to remind me she wasn't mine to imagine. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "You think I can fix that too?" "Maybe." Her smile barely appeared. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I mean them though." That's the problem. The air was warm, heavy. The window was half open, letting in wind that smelled faintly of rain. She turned away to close it, and I found myself moving closer without meaning to, drawn in by some gravity I didn't believe in before her. "Why are you here?" she asked, still looking out the window. "Because you didn't tell me not to be." When she turned, I was closer than I had planned. Her sweater brushed my arm. Her breath hit the base of my throat. "I told you," she whispered. "You make it too easy to forget myself. Maybe you want to." Her eyes lifted, not angry, not soft, just unguarded. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because you're young enough to believe it's simple." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she said it like a warning and a confession in one breath. "It doesn't feel simple." She looked at me for a long moment, then reached up, brushing her hand through my hair, slow, deliberate. My heart kicked. "I thought I was done feeling like this," she murmured. "Like what?" Her thumb lingered against my temple, tracing a line she shouldn't have. "Like wanting something that can only end badly." The wind caught her hair, and I reached up instinctively, brushing a strand from her face. My fingers grazed her skin, warm, soft, trembling just slightly. She didn't pull away. For a second, everything stilled. "You should go," she whispered. "I know." "Then go." But I didn't. Instead, she leaned forward, not a full step, not enough to call it what it was, just enough for the distance to collapse. Her hand pressed against my chest, maybe to stop me, maybe to steady herself. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back to mine. The world shrank to the space between us, one heartbeat wide, one breath deep. I could taste the question on her lips, the one neither of us could afford to answer. And then a crash. Something from the next room, glass hitting tile. she startled, stepping back just as the spell broke. Her breathing was unsteady, mine worse. "Stay here," she said, voice shaking, and turned toward the noise. I reached out, fingers brushing the sleeve she'd just pulled away from. "Wait," I said. She froze, halfway to the doorway. Neither of us spoke again. The silence between us said everything we weren't brave enough to. The sound of broken glass turned out to be nothing, a fallen vase, a breeze through an open window. But by the time she came back, the air between us had shifted. Something raw had been left open. She looked at me differently. Not softer, sharper. "You shouldn't have come," she said, voice low, almost hoarse. "I didn't plan to. That's worse." Her hands were shaking as she brushed glass from her palms. A small cut ran along her thumb. I reached for it instinctively, but she pulled back before I could touch her. "Don't," she whispered. "Please. I just want to help." "That's exactly the problem." She turned away, pressing her hand against the counter. I saw her shoulders rise and fall, unsteady. "I lied to you," she said finally. The words didn't sound rehearsed. They fell out, heavy and uneven. "I said it was over with him." I waited. My heartbeat filled the silence. "It's not." She shook her head. "It's ending, but not ended." For a moment, I didn't know which part hurt more, that she'd lied, or that she'd said it like she hated herself for it. "I thought," I started, but stopped. Because what had I thought? That she was free? That what we were doing was something we could name? She turned to face me, eyes wet but fierce. "I didn't plan this, you know. I didn't want you." "You think I did?" Her breath caught. She stepped closer, like she couldn't decide whether to fight or fall. "You make me feel." She stopped herself. "What?" I asked. "Like I'm about to lose everything I still have left." Her hand came up then, trembling slightly as she touched the side of my neck. It wasn't tender. It was desperate, a touch that said I shouldn't, but I can't not. Her thumb lingered against my skin, then dropped. She looked like she wanted to step back, but couldn't remember how. "You don't understand what this would do if anyone found out," she said. "You think people would just shrug?" I shook my head. "I don't care." She almost smiled, that sad, knowing kind. "You will, when it ruins me." I wanted to tell her it wouldn't. That I'd protect her, keep this quiet, make it mean something. But the truth sat heavy between us. I was too young to promise that, and she was too old to believe it. Then her phone lit up again on the counter. A name appeared. The same one as before. This time, I said it out loud. "He's still calling." She didn't deny it, just whispered, "He knows." My stomach dropped. "Knows what?" "That someone's been here." Her voice broke on the last word. Outside, headlights swept across the window, slow, deliberate. She moved toward me, eyes wide now, fear cutting through everything else. "Go," she said. "Now!" But I didn't move. Her hand gripped my arm, urgent, trembling. "Please." I looked at her, at the tears she hadn't wiped, the breath she couldn't catch. And for a heartbeat too long I stayed. The headlights outside didn't move for a long time. They just stayed there, idling in the dark, engine humming like a warning neither of us wanted to hear. She stood by the window, her silhouette caught between the thin curtain and the flicker of light from the street. I could see her reflection in the glass, her eyes, wide and uncertain. "He's waiting," I said quietly. She nodded once. "He always does. Just not usually here." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. When she turned from the window, they clenched at her sides like she was trying to hold herself together. "I should go," I said. "You should have already. But you don't want me to." The words hung there, too honest. She looked at me like she wanted to argue, then stopped herself. "I can't keep doing this," she said, her tone breaking in the middle. "It's wrong." "Then say it's over." She shook her head slowly. "If I say it, it will be." The rain started then, a soft patter that grew into something heavier. It filled the silence like a pulse. I took a step closer. She didn't back away. Her breath hitched when I reached out, my fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Her skin was warm, trembling beneath the touch. "Don't," she whispered. "You don't mean that." Her eyes lifted to mine, tired, terrified, wanting. "I mean every word. I shouldn't." She reached for me then, not out of courage but collapse. Her hand caught my shirt, pulling me closer until our foreheads almost touched. The space between us thinned until I could feel the rhythm of her breathing against mine. "This is madness," she said. "I know. I'm too old for you. I don't care." Her laugh came out as a breath, helpless, breaking. "You should." Her hand slipped to the back of my neck. My pulse jumped under her palm. The world outside vanished, just the rain, her scent, her voice. "I don't know how to stop wanting you," she whispered. "Then don't." She closed her eyes, leaning her forehead against mine. Her lips were close enough that I could feel the words when she spoke. "He'll leave soon," she said. "And after that?" Her eyes opened, glassy, searching. "After that, nothing will be the same." We stood there, unmoving, caught in the pause before everything changed. Her thumb brushed my jaw, slow and shaking. "If I let you," she said, "I'll lose what's left of my life. If you don't," I said, "you'll keep pretending it's still yours." The rain hit harder. She flinched, not from the sound, but from the truth. Then she exhaled, a small, broken sound, and let her forehead fall against my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her, not to claim, not to save, just to hold her still in a world that suddenly wasn't. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We just breathed, the kind of silence that's half surrender, half goodbye. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were clear. "Now you know," she said. "I do." And in that look, we both understood it wasn't about winning or losing, not anymore. It was about what we'd already become to each other, something neither of us could keep and neither could forget. By morning, the storm had passed. The streets outside were shining, washed clean, except for the quiet that always stays after something breaks. I went back, even though we'd both said we wouldn't. She opened the door before I could knock. No words. Just that tired, knowing look, the one people share when everything's already been decided, even if no one said it out loud. Her hair was still damp, sweater sleeves pulled over her hands. She looked softer than she ever let herself be before. "You came back," she said. "You left the light on." She smiled faintly. "Have it." "Hope," I said. Her eyes flicked up, surprised, but she didn't deny it. The house smelled like coffee and rain. I followed her to the kitchen, the same place where everything had started, the same table, same window, but the tension had changed shape. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was something settled, like the moment you finally stop holding your breath. We sat, not too close, not far either. She slid a mug toward me, fingers brushing mine in that old, familiar hesitation. Except this time, she didn't pull away. "Does he know?" I asked quietly. She shook her head. "He left this morning. I told him it was over. He didn't even argue." Something in her voice cracked, not sadness exactly, but the weight of finishing something that defined her for too long. "I thought I'd feel free," she said. "I just feel empty." "You'll fill it again," I said. "With what?" I didn't answer. I just reached across the table, my hand finding hers. She stared at it, and our fingers overlapping like a decision she wasn't sure she had the right to make. Then finally, she turned her palm upward. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. Just quiet, real, two people too human for the stories people tell about this sort of thing. She looked at me, really looked, and said, "You don't know what comes next." "I don't care what it's called," I said. "I just know I don't want to pretend anymore." Her eyes softened, a flicker of warmth breaking through the fatigue. She stood and walked around the table, stopping in front of me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she reached out, her hand against my cheek, thumb tracing the edge of my jaw like she was memorizing it. "I kept thinking I'd ruin your life," she whispered. "Maybe you'll fix it instead." That made her laugh, quiet, shaky, but real. When she leaned down, it wasn't a hungry kiss or a desperate one. It was slow, steady, the kind that feels like a promise and a release. When she pulled back, her forehead stayed against mine. "Now what?" she murmured. "Now we stop running from it." She smiled, small, uncertain, but true. Outside, the rain started again, soft this time, harmless. Inside, the quiet finally felt safe. We stayed there a while, her hand resting over mine, coffee cooling between us, the world still spinning but slower now. Whatever waited beyond that morning didn't matter. For once, the moment was enough. And in that stillness, her breath against my neck, her fingers tightening just slightly, I knew I wouldn't forget her. Not now. Not ever. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?